Howdy folks, how are we all doing? Here is a part 2 video over at the 6 Mile Cypress Slough near Fort Myers. So as I'm continuing to go down along this trail here, I noticed some different finds, when it comes to the plants. And from what I've noticed, there is a little bit of pop ash. And actually, where I was just a moment ago, there's like a little observatory over there, and then there's like a seasonal pond right there. It's called the Pop Ash Pond. So, with that being said, pop ash is basically a type of ash that is found in Florida. And usually when it comes to their leaf assembly, oftentimes it's quite opposite, like right there. Like the leaves are directly opposite of each other. And usually within one assembly, there might be up to 7 or 8 individual leaves. But pop ash is actually very tolerant of wet conditions. So that's why you'll most of the time only find it at these types of habitats. Then noticeably, it looks like we got some live oak. This is a immature one, it looks like. But that's not the only thing. You see these trees right above me? These are the trees that I was talking about. That's called Bald Cypress. And I believe the reasoning they really call it Bald Cypress is given the fact that it is one of the only deciduous conifer trees, as I mentioned in my last video. For those of you who aren't really sure what that means, well, think of it as other deciduous trees, especially up north. Think of red oaks or even sugar maples, just to name a couple. They lose their leaves as it gets into fall and then even the winter. Well, this is what's fascinating about the bald cypress is it's the only conifer that loses its leaves and then regrows them once it approaches spring. Now, other examples of conifers can include eastern white pine or even red pines. So, those cone-bearing types of trees. But what's particularly fascinating about the bald cypress is we're kind of at that stage right now where the leaves are starting to fall off and eventually contribute to the health of our soil down here, adding more nutrients, making it more organic. Now, typically when you look at the leaves, let me see. So seeing those brownish colors, that is natural for the tree. And trying to see, we might find some with more of the mature bald cypress, but oftentimes they'll produce a cone that has a bit of a round shape to it, or more spherical. And that's another unique characteristic of the bald cypress, because most cones have the shape of a cone. But then bald cypress is quite different. And it's a valuable food source, too, for our wildlife. But, yeah, as you can see, they can grow quite tall. I mean, just from initial glance, it's probably reasonable to say they're probably about 50 to 60 feet high. But if you want to see some of the oldest bald cypress trees in the nation, you'd want to go to the Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary, which is a bit further south of here. It's a bit closer to Naples. So, I kind of like to think of this as the mini Corkscrew. Yeah, even though it's mostly boardwalk, it doesn't matter. Just the sheer scenery that you get is totally worth it. So you may also be wondering too, what are all of these plants right here? Well, these are called swamp ferns. I'm sure many of you have heard of ferns, but do you really know what they are? Well, ferns kind of fall into their own classification. What's fascinating about ferns is given the fact that they are seedless, vascular plants. If some of you may be like, well, that sounds a little confusing. Well, not necessarily, as long as you understand why or how that is the case. So, starting with the first part, seedless. They don't produce any seeds. Their method of reproduction is usually through spores that can spread in the air and they eventually find a spot to anchor. But then, given the fact that they're vascular, means that they have plant tissue and a stem as well. And they're the only types of seedless vascular plants. There's no other like it. Now, with that being said, ferns in general are considered to be some of the oldest type of plants. These have existed even as far back as, say, the Triassic and Jurassic periods, back when the dinosaurs were still around. So you could say that, for all we know, some of these swamp ferns may have ancestors that were indeed present when dinosaurs were here. Not only that, but they also help act as an anchor in general, too, for the water. That way there isn't too much flooding that happens. But ferns are they're a unique plant. And like I said, they kind of fall under their own classification. Sometimes, I don't think you can see it with swamp fern, but usually on the other side, that's where you see all of those sporophytes, which is where essentially the spores are released. And it looks like we also have some epiphytes too. So we got some cardinal or bromeliads, However, though, we're kind of past that time of the year where you'll see those air plants in bloom. That usually happens typically during the springtime. So that's just something to keep in mind. So that's why it's always best to visit a nature preserve during separate times of the year. But yeah, that's cool though. Yeah, these have been here for a minute. It's alright, you guys. Hope you all had a chance to learn a bit further about the bald cypress and why they're so unique, and also what really makes up a fern as well. And what's so neat about the history of this place is the fact that this was started back in the 70s by just a simple group of high school students who went to school nearby. They started an initiative with Lee County, and with their actions that they took, they were able to protect this piece of land here. And it was just high school students. They weren't even, graduated from college yet. Just high school students. It just went to show that no matter what age you are, you can do anything to protect and act as a steward for the environment. And essentially, Lee County, back during that time, went through some rapid development. Like, you almost couldn't even keep up with it. So, just keep that in mind, high school students, or parents of high school students, are capable of anything. So, take care, you guys. Enjoy your Sunday, and definitely check this place out. It's open from Tuesday to Sunday. It's only closed on Mondays. So, alright, you guys, take care. Journey on a Journey is outwards. Take care, folks. See ya.